Welcome back to part 15, making plywood tool chest. So I'm going to go through a few tips later in the video, but to start off with, I just want to talk about how you can lay out your tools in the lid. There's no point me going through measurements and everything because everybody's tools are going to be different sizes. More just to give you some ideas, suggestions, and show you some comparisons. But this is a good chance to use up some offcuts. So depends how far you want to go. You know, I've got pieces of tongue and groove that have been cut off to fit when we're making traditional tool chests. You can slide tools into that. It will hold blades of the bottoms of saws. But I've also got some, I think I did a repair job on a more modern piece of furniture, and I've got some oak that's got a groove in it that a saw will sit in lovely. And also just small pieces of timber that are offcuts that you can then cut down to make things like toggles for holders. So depending on what size saws you've got, I would sort of say that they would go in the lid. And if I go back to my original one from years ago, you can see there's a gap at the top here. Really, I could move those two up, put another holder in at the bottom. And the other thing that I noticed is that actually when I made it, I must have used the offcuts, two offcuts from the lid stay to make a V and then some beach at the bottom. And actually what I've done temporarily is just put a magnetic strip and it works absolutely fine. A couple of magnetic strips there, so that's another option. But I'll probably end up moving these two up and put some holders in for this, which brings me on to the fact, again, reversibility. If you go and glue all these in, I've moved these recently, they were lower down, and I moved them up to fit the holders for the bigger back saw in the bottom. And I was able to just unscrew them and move them. You've got to pick your screw size carefully and work it out because you're only screwing into 12mm ply at the top. But, you know, a touch of animal glue, you know, fish glue or hide glue, and if you ever want to get them off, you can apply a little bit of steam and get them off, but really they don't need it. And you can move them around if it's not working for you. With this one, you're going to end up with some offcuts of ply at various sizes, and then you can shape them. So these end up making good holders for coping saws, fret saws, different sizes. And then you can make the toggles from any smaller offcuts that you've got. Magnetic strips I've mentioned, you can put them vertically, or you can put one down the bottom for putting the saws on. And when I look at the gaps in these, depends on your saw again, but I like to keep the blade savers on. That fits in there nice. I think that's about 7mm, and that one's about 10. And you'll work out just by laying them out, you know, you can shape them underneath, round them, do whatever you want. And you can space them out as much as you want. I tend to leave a little bit in the middle just for having some room to take these out, but it's fine, there's plenty of clearance. You can just take these out, pop them back in. And these actually obviously come off this way anyway, so nothing's fouling on each other. But you'll find you'll come up with ideas, probably a lot better ideas than myself. I think I also mentioned last time that if you bits of hinge, some nicer board than a piece of MDF. That was just, I grabbed a scrap, but it just allows you to double up and put some bits away, leave some other bits on top. And we all do it in our workshops, find any way of fitting things in. So I'm sure you'll come up with some great ideas, but hopefully that gets you thinking. I'm going to cut this oak into sections, probably shape the edge a little bit like I did on this ash here, just so it's not too square. And then I'll get my 3 saws in, because these are all for student when they're on courses, so they want to be reasonably the same. It just makes it easier for me, just getting everything prepped before we start. So if you've got any questions on tool holders, because I've just given an overview, because it's very individual. It really depends on your toolkit, what you do, which tools you use more often. But any questions, pop them in the comments below. I'll always come back to you. If it means checking measurements and things when I'm in the workshop, I'll check measurements and help as much as I can. It'd be lovely to see what some of you come up with for your tool storage solutions. And what I'll do one more part, which will be part 16, and we'll look at the surface finishing. We'll look at options for the outside. You can see here the inside there is done with Rubio Monaco, and that's exactly the same ply as this beach face ply. So there's your difference there. That one I think was birch ply that I did years ago, and it's never had anything on the inside. Gloss paint on the outside. But we'll go through them in part 16 and a few tips. But other than that, it's now get the tool holders fitted in the lid, and then get your dividers sorted in the trays, and then we can start putting tools in it. Now I'll just run through a few random tips that I thought of for the whole project, and then I'll just sign off. One little tip is that you'll have offcuts from cutting off your lower skirt, mitered, and obviously your upper lid seal. If you do decide to fit a lock, then you normally need a platform below to fit the lock too. So all you've got to do is shape the top of this or cope it so that that just sits in there nice, and then you can take the edges off that. If you need a wider one for a wider lock, you can use your plinth, although it'll probably be a bit thicker. So this one's probably the better one. A bit like, ignore that, it's a bit of oak that I'm just about to work on. Just like that one. So that's exactly what that was. Put a little chamfer up bevel on the edges. Another tip, you might only make one of these tool chests and think, well, I'm not going to make another one. But you just might decide you'll make another one and change it a little bit. You might show somebody else how to make another one. So keep all your offcuts. So I cut 2 pieces down to 175, and you'll have seen in the video I used them to set the runner height. I used one in the early video to set the distance 9mm and the depth for a pillar drill if you do it with a pillar drill for the Forstner, and I've labelled that up. If you want to set your table saw for the lower tray sides 110, it's as easy just to have a piece that's off the end of it, put it up against your fence. Same for the upper trays. Even setting the depth of your countersink so that you know that the screws are going to be just below the surface. Put them all in a box. I keep everything to do with the plywood tool chest in the box, including my 48 Forstner, one of the handles, the metal handles for the chest, various bits and pieces in there, just so that the old memory doesn't have to remember everything. If you come to make another one of these 6 months later or a year, everything's at hand. Another tip, if you've put particularly your upper tray together with pins, nails, then you'll have some in the end, and obviously they're going to be on top of the runners. And anyway, you might lift your tray out to clean out and put it on your bench. You don't want nails sticking out the bottom, so use a nail punch and a hammer and tap those nails underneath below the surface, particularly the ones that are near your runners, so they don't just scrape up all your runners, and keeps everything smooth. And anywhere you've put nails, if you just tap them below your surface, that'll end up with a better finish. So thanks for watching, thanks for sticking with it. Hope you found those tips useful. I'm sure I'll remember others, and I'll probably do a few, maybe a supplementary video later on, depending on what questions come in, or some shorts. And just to say, you can make this many different ways. I'm sure somebody will say, oh, you should have done it like that, shouldn't. Well, that's fine. But not everybody's got access to different jointing systems. You know, if I was making them traditionally, I'd dovetail rather than mitre all the trims. And I wouldn't counterbore them, and I probably wouldn't make it out of ply. I'd make a traditional one. So it is what it is. That one's lasted me over a decade in various workshops and the backs of vans. They look after your tools. I prefer them now to putting things up on the wall, and I've started taking stuff down off the wall, because no matter how good your workshop is, stuff will rust, it will get covered in dust. and I want to know where everything is, and depending on where I want to work, I can move my tool chest around. So you put your own spin on it. If you find better ways to do stuff or different ways to do it, you do it. If you want any more information or you've got any questions, stick them in the comments box, or message me on Instagram. But thanks for watching. Please subscribe, please hit the like button, please comment, and I'll be coming back soon with the part 16, which will be looking at the paint finish, or paint, not just paint, but different finish options, and looking at the interiors. And then I'll be getting back to some more traditional woodworking, and we can use the tools that are now in your tool chest, and we'll look at different joints, some timber projects, some tool reviews. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in part 16.